So, what are the consequences of not being prepared to handle challenging questions from the audience when you give you a presentation? This is an issue that I know a lot of my clients are sort of like this in the middle of the night. They're staying up awake, they're tense, they're worried. Oh my gosh, what if they ask me a question I don't know? And it could happen. You could be asked a simple question that everyone in the world would rightly assume you have thought about and you know and you should be able to answer quickly. And if you go something like this, if you look embarrassed, that's going to be the most memorable moment of your entire presentation. So it could hurt your career. It could damage your reputation. I don't want to kid you. But I want you to think about something for a moment. Think of all the times you've been to presentations and how often have you seen someone fail to answer a question and it was obvious to everyone, they humiliated themselves, they embarrassed themselves, and everyone remembered it, and you could tell it hurt their career. Now, that's a question I ask live audiences all over the globe on a regular basis. And if I'm speaking to 1,000 people, sure enough, a couple hundred hands will go up. So it is a real issue. It's possible to not be able to answer a question. Now, when I ask people, does this happen to you? Typically, only a few hands go up. But sure, it can happen. But I always ask people a second question. The second question is, how many times have you been to a presentation, and at the end of the presentation, if someone came around and said, here's $1,000, tell me one thing that last speaker said, and I'll give you the $1,000, and you wouldn't be able to collect because the speaker was so incredibly boring. How many of you have ever experienced that? Guess how many hands go up? It's not 200. It's all 1,000 hands go up. Reason I point that out is I want you to focus on real risks and the most likely risk. You know, if you live in the mountains, you're probably not worried about tsunamis coming to get you. You're too high above sea level, right? If you're giving a presentation, far and away, the most likely problem you're going to face is not that you humiliate yourself by not answering a question. It's that you completely wasted your opportunity because you were boring, because you weren't interesting, because nobody remembered anything you said. That's a real danger. It happens every day. In boardrooms, conferences, hotel rooms, meetings, all over the globe. So that's the real risk I want you to prepare for, not the tough question that you didn't prepare for. I also want to give you a tip on exactly how to handle that question. What gets so many people in trouble is they're asked a question and they don't know the answer. So all of a sudden they panic. And the problem is their body language doesn't lie. They're doing things with their face or verbally. It might not be that advanced or extreme, but they're doing things that signal to the person who asked the question and everybody else in the room, oh my gosh, I'm nervous, I'm embarrassed, this is awful. Here's the issue though. It may be the question wasn't even that important. People don't even remember the question most of the time, but they remember your reaction. They remember it because there was all this emotion. Chances are every other part of your presentation dealt with facts and figures and numbers and concepts, but then the one emotional moment of your entire presentation was when you couldn't answer the question. This is a huge, huge problem because people remember the emotional component. That might be the only thing anyone ever remembers from your presentation. So am I telling you, have a perfect memory, know everything? No, that's tough. Here's what I'm suggesting, the advanced technique. If someone asks you a question you don't know the answer to, look at them with a confident smile on your face and say, I don't know. What I can tell you is, and then answer something that's related to that. Perhaps you know someone else in your organization does know the answer. You can say, I don't know. Jim in our accounting department does. I will find out from him right after this presentation and get the information to you by lunch. Would that be okay? So here's the beauty of that answer. Even if the question is something people would assume you know, they're not going to remember that answer because you didn't completely shift the emotional state of the whole presentation. You didn't go from comfortable, confident, professional, business-like to, oh my God, you continued the same emotional state. Therefore, it's not memorable. So keep that in mind. You don't want them to see you sweating, literally or figuratively. You want to act calm and collected. Now, it may be that you do know the answer. You need a couple seconds to think about it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with hearing a question. The answer is, I just paused. Now, if you're nervous or uncomfortable, that 1.5 second pause may feel wildly uncomfortable and take you out of your comfort zone. You may be panicking. Don't. It's going to seem longer to you, but to anyone else in the audience, you will simply seem like you've been a good listener. You're reflecting. You're giving due consideration to the person's question. Well, people like that. So don't put pressure on yourself to answer instantly. Because what does happen to people around the globe is you feel a certain nervousness when you're speaking in front of people. The larger the group, the more anxiety you feel, the more adrenaline is flowing through your body because your body's telling you, run, get out of here. Don't let these people get you. So you're feeling that. And because of that, you're not able to recall information as quickly or as easily. So give yourself a second to think, a second to breathe, a second to reflect. Always, one option is to say, I don't know. I'm happy to do more research on that, and I will get back to you. Was that good? Another option is to say, and I'm not asking you to lie or be deceitful, but sometimes a person may ask you a question, and there's no way you can answer that without spending 10 minutes in context, and it would really disrupt the whole flow of the conversation you're having, the speech, the presentation you're giving. My recommendation then, again, is not to act flustered, not to act embarrassed, not to say, oh, I don't really know how to answer that in a short period of time. The solution is to say, your question is so important, I want to give it all the due diligence and consideration it deserves. It would take me about 10 minutes to provide the proper context, and I want to give you the respect that you deserve. So if you can meet me in the back of the room 10 minutes after this presentation concludes, I'm happy to talk about that. Now the person doesn't feel like you ignored them. Now the person asking the question feels respected, and everyone else in the audience will either have a positive association with you and what you said, or they simply won't remember it. So these are things I want you to keep in mind when it comes to that night before the big presentation and you're worried about, what if somebody asks me a tough question? Now, of course, you can always do a better job of preparing by thinking, brainstorming out loud every possible tough question that could be asked. You can ask your colleagues, other people in your industry, say, hey, I'm giving the speech tomorrow to this group. Can you think of any tough questions they might throw at me? And have questions come at you. But keep in mind, there are an infinite number of questions that can be prepared or asked in advance and during the actual presentation. Some people make the mistake of spending all their prep time brainstorming on tough questions. Meanwhile, they haven't actually rehearsed a great presentation. So my recommendation is spend at least 95% of your prep time making sure you have really interesting, helpful, useful, memorable ideas for your audience. Then spend your time rehearsing it on video until you like how you come across. If you do that, your audience is going to love you, even if you can't answer one tough question.